good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hopefully you're having a nice lunch break wherever you are. We are in Japan. I'm in Hiroshima. I'm JJWalsh, and this is Helen Iwata. Helen, you're in Tokyo, is that right?
I'm in Tokyo, right in the middle.
Have you always lived in Tokyo?
For many, many years in Tokyo. When I first came to Japan, which was 1991, I was in Yokohama for 3 years and then moved to Tokyo.
All right. And you run the business Sasuga Communications. And is it from 2013 you started? Is that right?
That's right. You have your dates. I was going to have to calculate back. When was it? Yeah, 2013. I basically, I'd been in the corporate world and decided to make a change. So I left my company and the next day I set up my business and off and running.
On your website, you have a bit of a hard, difficult story as to why you wanted to make a change and start your own business. Can you tell us that a little bit?
I can talk about that. And that's there was some debate in my team about how open to be. And I thought, well, let's just put it out there and see what sort of reaction we get, because I'm really passionate about the whole issue of there are so many women, especially, so it's not just women, it's men as well, but especially women. I'm focusing on supporting women. So much overwork, so much giving yourself a hard time, and I was totally there. I went through multiple burnouts, not just one lot of burnout, but multiple burnout situations, and that is really what's made me so passionate about what I do now, which is that I help women to excel in their work without being exhausted. And I use what I call the Sasuga Success Cycle, which really helps you to be focusing on doing the best activities and tasks at the best times for yourself and doing them really well.
Yeah, I'm showing it on screen right now, your Sasuga Success Cycle. It's all the S's, just like I have to say every day. Seeking Sustainability Live, Sasuga Success Cycle. I almost got there. For people who might not know Japanese, can you tell us what you mean by Sasuga?
Okay, so a lot of people ask me, where did you come up with the name Sasuga? So I chose the name Sasuga for 3 reasons. The first reason, when I started my business, communication was the big focus in my business, as well as translation. So the first reason is that I believe that communication should be clear and simple. And when you say Sasuga in Japanese, that is clear and simple to Japanese people. Now, it's not for people who don't know what it means, and I'll come to that in a moment. Also, I really believe in helping people to feel good. And when you say Sasuga to people, then they feel good. And then the third reason is that I was doing translation at the beginning of my career, or my independent career. And Sasuga is a really difficult word to translate into English. There isn't an English equivalent for Sasuga. So it can mean things like wow, or it can mean like atta girl, or it can be that's the exact wonderful thing that I thought that a fabulous person like you would do. There's no real equivalent. So it really has impact, especially with the Japanese audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard it used in many positive ways, right? Like if someone does something well and you're like, oh, Sasuga Helen, like she always does it well, like as a compliment, right? So in your business, using Sasuga in a success cycle, that's what you're aiming for, right? You want people to have an image of you as someone who always follows through. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I chose that name at the very beginning of my independent career when my focus was communication, was business communication and translation. And it's since then that I've developed my focus to be primarily supporting women. I still do a lot in terms of business communication skills training, especially for corporations. And it's great for me that Sasuga word has kind of traveled along with me and still fits in the current context.
Let's talk a little bit about your TED Talk that you did in 2016. It was about diversity and global business atmosphere and empowering women. There were so many great takeaways from that. Can you give us a summary of some of your key points?
So what I was really focusing on there is encouraging women to ask more questions in the workplace, and not just women. The thing was that particular TEDx event, the focus was women, and so they asked for us to gear our topics towards women. So I talk about women. At the same time, it can be for anybody, and especially in Japan, just this whole idea of asking questions. Often it's considered as, shitsure, it's like, it's impolite to ask questions, and that was kind of the traditional way of thinking. But when we're working in a global business environment, if we're not asking questions, people make assumptions, and that can lead to misunderstandings and frustration and inefficiency. So yeah, that was the focus, is just get people to ask more questions and feel okay about it.
Yeah, I think one of the examples where you talk about an exchange you had with your designer, and he is negotiating meaning back to you to check understanding. And I think that was one of your key points, right? Like, if you don't check understanding, you're going to waste time. And you use the concept of mottainai as a wasting efficiency in the workplace if you don't ask questions, if you don't check the meaning, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That was, I think I was talking about paraphrasing there, but you just reminded me of one really clear example, really clear story that relates to this part about, asking questions and checking with people. So there was one of a very senior American colleague that I was working with many years ago, and he asked for a meeting with me. He's like, Helen, I just don't understand it. I asked my Japanese team to do something, and then they come back a week later with something completely different from what I asked for. And of course, it turned out that he wasn't checking their understanding, and the Japanese team, were kind of a little bit intimidated by him as the American boss, and so they weren't asking him questions and clarifying. So they're both going away with different assumptions and then coming back with a different result. And that's exactly you're not getting the great results. You're getting the inefficiency. You're getting frustration. Yeah.
It's especially in the international workplace. I think you were talking about how when you asked a question to the Google, one of the Google heads, and she was talking about diversity in the workplace makes for better communication, because when you're communicating across languages, you have to be extra careful that you have the right idea so you don't waste time or waste energy or effort, which is so frustrating, especially in the international workplace. So I really appreciated that point of view.
Yeah, and also when you have that diverse team and you're working together, because you've got more different backgrounds, you can bring in ideas that other people would never have thought of, and that's so powerful. It's really, harmony. We talk about harmony a lot in Japan, and harmony is a great thing. At the same time, if everybody's focusing on doing things in the same way, you often miss out on innovation opportunities.
Yeah. And another thing, I think it was like a prophecy. This was 2016, but you're talking about working remotely, which is so much more relevant in 2020, 2021 now, right? So what communication skills do you teach people now as people are working from home? How have you adapted to your advice for presentations or business meetings? Has it changed at all now that everybody's working from home?
Yeah, it's been so funny because I was working online. I was doing online coaching and things for many years, even before this all started. And so it was actually very easy for me, and it was actually welcome for me, because now not only the one-on-one coaching, but also I do quite sizable corporate workshops just going through, online, which is normal for people these days, but it didn't used to be. I would say the biggest difference is that personal interaction and personal communication, because quite often people seem to think that it's a device and I can just sort of look down at my screen, or I can look down at my notes, and they're forgetting to connect with the audience in the same way that you would do when you're in person. So, one just really, really simple tip that I think gradually now people are starting to understand is just looking into the camera instead of looking down at your at your screen. Even though it can be tricky because you want to look at your notes, it's more important to make that contact with your audience, especially if you're talking to an important client, for example. Yeah.
Do you ever use tips like using people's names, or even if you're on a multi-person call with other people in your team or a meeting room, you might say a question to them instead of just talking at them? Like, keep some of the same techniques you would in a face-to-face presentation?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much like almost all of the techniques that you would use in a face-to-face presentation, the vast majority you can still use when you're online. Obviously, there's some that, physically you can't so much sort of walk around because you're off screen. But the vast majority you can, in terms of, there's the real basic, when you go back to the basics of communication, first of all, understanding who your audience is, structuring in a really clear way, using your body language, because you can still use, even if it's a limited space, but you use the body language, you use your voice in a way that engages your audience, all of those things, it's the same.
I love your story, how you decided that you needed to be better at presentations, because you did a presentation and then somebody hijacked your presentation and actually was talking more than you. And then people's feedback was like, I was actually looking forward to what Helen wanted to say. Yeah. And you were like, don't let people hijack. So do you have a strategy for that now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just think that was right back. I think that was my first proper presentation. I hadn't taken any kind of presentation skills training at that time, and I was actually relieved at the time that the other person was asking, like, hijacking my presentation, because he was the center of attention. I didn't want to be. Right. So in terms of how I've developed since then, it's just really been learning the presentation skills, which I first started when I was in the corporate world. I received presentation skills training, and I was so shocked at the time that I actually wasn't terrible at it. Right. And so many people, when they're first doing presentations, they think that they're terrible. But if you haven't had any kind of training, and if you haven't had a lot of practice, well, how can you expect to be good at something? Right. And once you know the skills and you do the practice, I haven't found anyone yet that I've worked with who could not be a good or even a great presenter. So.
Wow, that's great. I think when I first started teaching at high schools and then teaching at universities in Japan, one of the images I had before coming to Japan was Japanese people are shy, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I came to Japan, and even in class, some students would be shy, but then you would see them at the festival singing on stage and doing karaoke, and I was like, holy cow, I need to tap into that, They are not shy in the sense that they can't do presentations. Have you found that you just need to tap into some kind of karaoke power that they have, or something that they're a bit fearless in, or changing their mentality while they're speaking? Can you give us one of your tips that you would give?
Yeah. Well, it's really comes from the whole being concerned about what other people think and getting it right, because those are so strong. So learning that it's more important to actually make the connection with the audience than to get your words exactly right. Like nobody really cares about the grammar, whether the pronunciation is totally perfect, using sophisticated words. Those things don't matter. It's more important to actually be communicating with an audience, talking about what's relevant for them, maybe asking them some questions and that sort of thing.
Yeah. You've recently started the Sasuga Cafe.
Yes.
Is that a way for you in smaller groups to support people in a more personal way to help them over time with coaching? Can you tell us about that?
I will. I'm going to take a little sip from
Yeah,
my
yeah.
Sasuga mug, which my team got me for my birthday. So this is like a one of a kind. So
It's
yeah, the Sasuga
important
Cafe. This is something that I'm hugely
important to
passionate about.
hydrate and take a
So,
drink when you need it. Yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah. That's also something important about presentations as well, because naturally your digestive system, it shuts down when you're under pressure. So you don't have the saliva producing in the normal way, so you get thirsty. Little tip, make sure you have something to drink.
Very good.
So Sasuga Cafe, it's an online community, an online membership. It's all in Japanese, and it's for women to connect, to have fun, and to support each other to excel in their work without being exhausted. So I just started this in January, and it's been incredible. The I don't know, because I've done groups like this, have like, for example, a Facebook group where people interact, and there's a library with the trainings and all of those things, and we have, regular calls and stuff. But maybe because I'm offering this in Japanese, the posts and the comments, it's just like, and it's like freedom almost in there. So totally unexpected topics. Like you mentioned, we were talking earlier about miso, right? Just before we before we went live. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in the group for making your own miso, right? And other kind of foods. And so within the Sasuga Cafe, now some of the members are setting up a little corner, a little special group for the hakkobu, basically, the fermented food group. So this is something I love as well, because the group the connecting, they're having fun, and also having an opportunity to demonstrate leadership in a very, very safe environment. So it's just wonderful. Like every day I was like, I'm just going to the Facebook group and see what's happening. And they're just, they chat, and this, recommending things to each other. It's beautiful.
That's great. And do you find that the kind of advice you would give for improving presentations in English are different than in Japanese for women, or would you give the same kind of advice, you think?
A lot of it is the same, and what I would say is key is what I also say number one in your presentations is it's all about the audience. So when you're giving a presentation in Japanese, that suggests that probably your audience is primarily going to be Japanese, but then it depends on what kind of Japanese, because you can give a very different presentation to a group of, really senior male Japanese executives compared with a younger group from different backgrounds, not working in a company, maybe entrepreneurs, for example. So it's not, strictly speaking, just the language. It's who the actual audience is that you're talking to.
And do you find that it's the words that you use is also very important in Japanese more than English, or like register, using polite language, or is it body language? Is it tone? Like in English, I think you can judge the room, right? Read the air. They say it in Japanese too, right?
Yeah.
And it seems very different in English versus Japanese, and also different again in Japan for women.
Yeah. It depends on who you are as well, because if you are a Japanese female presenting to a very senior Japanese audience, then the expectations and what's going to fit best are going to be different from other situations. Because, like, for example, as a female who's not Japanese but speaks Japanese, then it's kind of like I can get away with more. in a sense. So it just keeps going back to thinking about who your audience is. Yes, using words that are appropriate for that particular audience. That's also important.
I saw on your Facebook page you offer different services, so different kind of workshops or classes. For example, presentation skills for companies, individual meeting skills.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about the services that you offer?
Oh, definitely. So in terms, so corporates, I will do workshops and also one-on-one coaching. So that's very often it's presentation skills, or it can be around meeting facilitation, those kind of communication related. And also some of the, there's a growing interest in how to support women more. So that's one that's increasing, which is wonderful. And also the one-on-one coaching, which is really tailored to each individual's needs. Then on the individual side, I can also provide that kind of one-on-one coaching. For presentation skills, what I recommend is speak like an expert online. So this is an online course, it's self-study, and it takes you through all these things that we've just been talking about, the analyze your audience, structure your message, body language, voice, slides, what to do when people ask you questions, all of those things are in there. And then from there, you can do it yourself, practice. If you want to take it a step further, then I also have intensive classes, which right now it's for 4 people maximum each time, a 3-hour session, 4 people maximum, so that everybody can be in a comfortable environment and then get plenty of practice, so that you've learned all of the essentials in the online course, and then you can actually practice it online. So that's also, a wonderful experience to see the change just in 3 hours, because I'll get people to, on their smartphone, to record themselves at the beginning, and then they record themselves at the end, and they're like, wow, like the difference is quite huge for such a short time.
That's great. You also give lots of strategies which should help people who feel overwhelmed or out of control. Yeah. You talk about moving stress to success, right?
Yeah.
And one of your feedback that you shared on your Facebook page, I feel a connection with your positive energy when I see your email. It cheers me up and makes me stronger. Even when I'm struggling with my job in my company, this is very valuable to me. It's so nice to hear.
I love that. Yeah, so a couple of other things that I do is I have a weekly newsletter, Sasuga Tips for You, and that goes out in English and Japanese, and that just has just little bits of tips that you can use on a daily basis. And then I have the Sasuga podcast, which is sometimes it will be a solo episode where I'm sharing something. In fact, we've got an episode coming up around when you have too much to do in too little time, right? How to ease that feeling of stress from that. And then sometimes it will be with a guest, so that we have a conversation and we have some wonderful insights come out of those as well.
Yeah, I love your podcast, and I've introduced it on my website as one of my favorite podcasts in Japan by female leaders. So thank you so much for all that. I think it's so inspiring and encouraging for many people looking for a bit of camaraderie, I think, as well as other things, right?
Yeah, it's so funny for me as well when sometimes people say things like, oh, I feel like I'm talking to you or listening to you on a daily basis, because they're listening to the podcast. It's wonderful.
Your most recent one I just listened to, talking about your word of the year. Can you tell us about that? Yeah?
Okay, so the word of the year for this year is ripple. Ripple, which is really about this idea of just spreading. So at the beginning of 2020, I was all like, energy, and let's do this and this and this. And then of course 2020 didn't turn out quite like anybody expected. And I mean, I felt quite tired, even though I'm a pretty genki, lively person most of the time. I felt pretty tired by the end of 2020 and ready to come into 2021 with a little bit more of a sort of gentle approach. So this is also very much related to the Sasuga Cafe, which is, whereas in the past I've had, and I still have, the Sasuga VIP Women's Coaching Program. It's a 3-month, more intensive coaching program. But now I'm also offering the Sasuga Cafe as more of an entry point. And then it's also in Japanese, which makes it easier for a lot of women. And then if they want to go further, they can go into the VIP program as well.
Yeah. We have a comment from Marian. Marian Kinoshita says, Helen helped me crawl out of my shyness shell years ago. She is a true energizer. But listening to this chat, I realize I need a refresher course. I still hold back when it comes to asking questions. Thanks, Marian.
That's wonderful. Yeah, Marian, I love Marian to bits. Marian, we've got open arms for you in the Sasuga Cafe if you want to come in, because I know your Japanese is fabulous. Yeah, so she made some pretty impressive changes some years ago.
Well, Marian was great. She joined us when we were talking about Kamakura Mind and her work with them on the series. So that was really fun. Another comment says, thanks for the 5-day email challenge. I don't feel swamped with emails anymore, which helps me focus on what I should focus on. And my productivity has improved. How great to see an empty inbox, from Yoshiko.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us about this 5-day email challenge? Sounds great.
I certainly can. So, I was I used to receive hundreds of emails. I actually counted at one point that in a day I received 600 emails. And you know what it's like when you have all these emails coming in and you feel the pressure and you've got to respond to them. I think things have changed now because maybe more people are using other forms of communication as well, which is great. But still, a lot of my corporate clients especially really struggle with email. And they're spending so much time just dealing with that they're not doing the things that are really going to make a difference in their business. So I originally developed a system for myself because it was a problem for me. And once I developed that system for myself, I then started to introduce it to my clients, and they started to see great results, like Yoshiko as well. And in fact, I have just recently gone through the whole challenge. So it's a 5-day challenge where you basically get an email, ironically, an email every day. But you focus on that email, you follow the instructions in that email, and then it's going to help you to actually reduce the emails that you get and be able to process them more quickly, and then be able to spend time on the things that are more important for you. So I've simplified the whole challenge. What I've also done is I've created a PDF that summarizes everything, because what I've found, and this I found from my own experience, is sometimes when you have like a holiday period or like a really intensely busy period, and the emails start to build up and you kind of fall, off track. So I've created a PDF so that when that happens, you can very easily just follow that, get back on track really, really quickly. And it's just so great to be able to go, whoosh, done, focus on what's important now.
I think this is so typical of all of us in this modern day, especially now that everyone's working from home. I think the amount of digital information we have to process is tenfold what it used to be. And email
much more than 10.
is stressful, right? If you have loads of emails to deal with, you kind of put it off, and then it builds up, and then some of them are important, others are not so important. So having strategies that help you get through it efficiently without having your whole day about your emails, that's huge.
Yeah. It's wonderful. Like I can now, so the other day I was retesting everything that I put into that challenge, and I was like, okay, boom, email, all done in 10 minutes. It was finished for the day. I mean, how great is that?
That is great. That's wonderful. Another one, you talk about key habits. So the key, if you want to build habits that last, is to join a group where the desired behavior is the normal behavior. From James Clear, Atomic Habits. You shared that.
Yes. Yeah. I love, so let's just say how wonderful James Clear of Atomic Habits is. It's if you haven't read the book, it's a brilliant, brilliant book, and it's out in Japanese as well. So I love that, and I'm really passionate about habits and also about groups, which again goes back to the Sasuga Cafe. This is why I'm so passionate about it, because women in there are learning to look at things in a different way. They are gradually making changes. They're seeing each other doing that. And this goes back as well to the ripple effect that I mentioned. The ripple effect is not just about the changes for those women, but when they make changes, it impacts the people around them, their colleagues, their families. And so it's just this ongoing, really, really positive effect. And my goodness, we need that right now.
Yeah, I think definitely. I was really disheartened to see the latest statistics in Japan of the suicide rates going up, and so many more women and actually children are taking their own lives because they feel hopeless.
Yeah.
So I really was excited to talk to you and get some advice about how to support other women in particular. I think, especially working women in Japan, working mothers, they have been very hard hit by coronavirus problems in Japan because a lot of women work in less secure types of contracts at work, right? Have you found that with the people you're consulting with?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this was a conversation again with one of the women in the Sasuga Cafe. I know I keep talking about it, but I'm so passionate about it. So she was asking, she was saying that she's noticed her colleague is very depressed. And so she's, you know, she's really concerned and she wants to help her. And what I wanted to point out to her is that, yes, it's good to be paying attention to that person, but also for her to think of the impact to herself. So she can offer, you know, different ways of looking at things. She can maybe, you know, show concern, show, you know, empathy. But if she is causing stress to herself from wanting to support her colleague, then that's also not a good thing. So my advice to her was to just be very careful there about the boundaries, so that you're making sure, number one, you look after yourself, and then, you know, where you can, offer possibilities to others. But at the end of the day, it's up to that other person whether they want to do something different.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not, we can't be responsible for everybody.
Absolutely. And I think it's something they tell you on the airplane, right? Put your
Totally.
own face mask on first before
Yeah, the
you help
oxygen.
other people, right? You know,
Yeah.
like it's so true for especially working mothers. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. You have to be happy in your life before you can motivate your kids to be happy in their lives. There's so much pressure on mothers, but you know, it's so important to remember you do have to think of your own health, your own mental health and emotional health and physical health. It's very important.
Yeah, definitely.
Going back to your TEDx talk, you gave examples of three women who handle a meeting by saying nothing and handle it in very different ways, which you then talk about motainai again, waste of efficiency. But I think this also correlates to internal stress and feeling really unhappy with your role in your workplace, right?
Yeah.
Like how you internalize information and don't add your point of view is very stressful, right? Just taking it, even if you complain about it, I think it's less rewarding than if you feel like you can be a valuable member of your team, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And what I often come back to is the question of choice. And people very often forget that they have a choice. And it might not be an easy choice. You do have a choice though. So if you're in a working environment that's not supportive, you don't feel that you're able to, make your best contribution there, you have a choice to look for something different. And it can be really quite amazing when you do look at those other opportunities. And we've had women in the Sasuga VIP Women's Coaching Program. When I think about it, a surprising number of women who started the program, it's only a 3-month program. They started the program and they were like, no, I kind of want to do something different career-wise. And by the end of the program, 3 months, they've actually secured a new position, or they've even moved to a different job, and even different country we've had as well.
Yeah. Well, I think once you start talking about it, don't you start understanding, once you say it out loud, sometimes you start understanding yourself better? Like you've been pushing it back or pushing it down and not dealing with it. And then once you're in a group or with a coach, it's almost like a therapy session and it comes out. And then you yourself realize, hey, wait a second, that doesn't sound good. Like maybe I need to reassess that for myself. Do you find that?
Absolutely. That's so often, in coaching, it's not telling someone what to do. A lot of the time it's asking a question and just getting the people to think in a different way and see different perspectives. Like I'm all about the different perspectives. And then once you see that perspective and you start to believe that it could be possible for you, then you can move in that direction, and then you start to just gradually build evidence and see more and more possibilities. And again, going back to the whole idea of being in a group, as you're seeing that in other women, you can do more of that yourself. You're encouraged to do more of it yourself. So I love that.
That's great. Let's go back to your success cycle. Can you take us through the stages in a bit more detail?
Okay, so going briefly through, and I don't see which image you've got. Have you got the image on the screen right now?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And does it have the phase 1 is in gold?
Yes.
Right, and that's the care for you phase, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I say this because I've gone through several versions as I've realized, like, oh, this makes more sense. Oh, this makes more sense, because I'm all about what's really practical and easy. And this is again what I've used for myself. So I learned about this concept of women's cycles and menstrual cycles, and how you have different levels of energy, the changes in the hormones throughout the month, and depending on those, you are more suited to certain tasks and activities at sometimes than others. So just to take you through it very, very simply. So phase 1 is the phase of the period, right? Approximately 1 week. It's going to vary from woman to woman. And that is the time when you really need to rest. You need to care for yourself. And what I found is, just by introducing this concept to women, they feel like they've got permission to rest. So that has made a huge, huge difference. And then moving into phase 2, which is create your plan. This is the week following your period, when you start to have more energy and you start to look at new possibilities. So it's a really, really good time for brainstorming, goal setting, planning, all of those kind of things. Then you move into phase 3, which is communicate your ideas. And what absolutely fascinated me about this is that this is the time around ovulation. So it's the time when you are naturally more magnetic, more attractive to people. So it's a brilliant time to be communicating. So if you can, and obviously it depends on your work situation, but if you can, schedule important presentations for that week. And then that moves into phase 4, which is to complete your tasks. Now that is the week before your period, which is traditional PMS time. And a lot of people are, right? The thing is that when you use that very intense kind of it's kind of more of a naikoteki, it's more an inward facing energy rather than outward facing energy, when you can use that to really get focused on the important things and get them completed.
Wow,
So that's
great.
in a nutshell what it's all about. So what I work with is helping women to do the best things at the best times for them, and then also to do them in a really great way. Like, for example, with the Create Your Plan, I have a planning masterclass, which I take them through steps of how to do that in a really great way.
Well, that's great. And would you recommend self-care in terms of getting out and exercising or doing meditation or yoga in certain stages especially, or pretty standard all the way around?
Yeah, I would say on the whole, the more self-care you can put in throughout the whole cycle, the better. It's that week, that first week, phase one, care for you. That's when you really want even more. The rest of the time, though, it's so important to have more self-care for most for most people. And I talk about self-care as a success strategy, because you really need to look after yourself, as we were talking about earlier on, put on your own oxygen mask first, because if you're exhausted, and my goodness, especially in the current environment, if you're exhausted, you can't support other people, you can't make your best contribution in your work. So it's so important, really getting over that kind of guilt of looking after yourself. Another of the women in the Sasuga Cafe, she told us a story about how she took a day off work. She took a Friday off work, and she decided not to check her emails. And she had this whole conversation in her head about, oh, I should probably check. At least when I get home, I should probably just check and make sure everything. And she stopped herself. She stopped herself until Monday morning. Monday morning, she finally checked her emails, and everything was fine.
I think we need to give ourselves a break. And even if there were emails asking her to do things, hopefully she still felt better that she took that time for herself when she needed it, and she felt better able to handle it once she went back to work. And hopefully in our workplaces we have built up enough camaraderie where we help each other. If you see somebody struggling or leaving work or not coming in, hopefully you're in that kind of office where you would cover for them and help out a little bit more, and then they would help you next time, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what we hope for. Another thing you've talked about, which I really understood and found very interesting, was imposter syndrome, a phenomenon in which people are unable to internalize their accomplishments or success. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it amazes me how many, quite senior women I work with who question their abilities. So yeah, I'm thinking of some particular senior managers, and they don't think that they have the answers, for example, in presentations, and they're worried about that. And what I say to them is, you would not be in the position that you are in now if you were not an expert. And again, this goes back to the whole, you don't have to be perfect. Even if you can't fully answer one question, that's okay. As long as you're answering the majority of the questions and you're showing your expertise there, it's fine. But this, I'm not good enough, and everybody else, comparing with other people, you don't know what other people's backstory is and how long they've done whatever it is that they're doing. So yeah, I encourage people, women, to step out of the comfort zone, because when you step out of the comfort zone, it feels uncomfortable, but that's when you grow and you learn to do new things.
Yeah, definitely. I think you talk about this in your podcasts and in your presentations about how not only in Japan, but definitely in Japan, women are going through education, never asking questions, never being called on. Quite often the focus is on the boys, on the men, and then when they enter the company, there is a different kind of attitude towards female workers in business. And maybe that's connected to the imposter syndrome and trying to create a sense of confidence in your own abilities and in what you are allowed to say and you should be allowed to say. This is such a big hurdle. Have you found this, especially in Japan, with women working in Japan, that they have to overcome that years of training, bad training, where they're not being taken seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I've also heard that imposter syndrome is more common in what you would call minorities. So it doesn't just have to be Japanese women, it could be women, it could be, whatever the group you're in, if you're the minority in that group, there's more likelihood that you will feel that imposter syndrome. So a lot of the time, it's about that initial awareness and just recognizing a situation and then kind of going ahead anyway. Like I say this with presentations as well. Being scared of giving presentations is absolutely normal as a human being. If you are an adult and you've not had, because it's different for children, right? Because they don't have all of those concerns about what will people think about me, right? If you're a normal adult and you've not had presentation skills training and you've not had a lot of experience and you're put in front of on a big stage, for the vast majority of people, you're going to feel nervous about it, right? So once you understand that that's normal, and you understand the things that are going to go on with your body, you start your heart beating faster. I talked about the digestive system shutting down, all of those things. When you know that's normal, then you can, oh, okay, this is okay. This is normal. I'm normal. And then you can go ahead and make progress. Again, going back to what we said about being in a group. This is what I've noticed so many times when I do, for example, group coaching. And there'll be one of the women talking about some kind of difficult situation that she has. All the other faces on the screen are going, I don't, right? They've all, and so often they say, oh, I thought it was just me. And yeah, and very often as well, they're like, what, Helen, you felt that too? Even you? And I'm like, yes, it's normal. It's okay.
I think that's so true. And becoming an entrepreneur, I think for me as well, I had imposter syndrome, but I've only ever been an educator. How can I be an entrepreneur? And then listening to other entrepreneurs say that they had very similar feelings getting into doing work for themselves, not working for someone else, getting their own ideas out there. I think it's any kind of new experience. Humans, we don't like change very much. Change is uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, because your primitive brain is designed to keep you safe. So anything that is new is potentially dangerous. So like, let's hold you back. Let's have all of these kind of reactions going in the body to this fear is to keep you safe.
But what you said about collaborating with others, have a group that understands each other and supports each other, even having other entrepreneurs that would support you in your business efforts, supporting others through social media. I always tell this to small business people who are really struggling right now. It's a great time to reach out to other similar businesses. There's a guy who's a potter in Shimane, and he likes Instagram. And I said, well, find other potters on Instagram and comment and like on their posts, whether they're in other countries or Japan. And you'll just start to develop this network and support each other, right?
Yeah. And what I would also say is asking for help. Like, so this is something that was a struggle for me for a very long time, especially in my corporate career. I didn't feel like I could ask for help because I thought it was a sign of weakness. I should be able to do it all myself. When as you talk about small businesses, small business owners can contact people who are maybe a little further ahead and ask for advice and ask for support. And you'll probably be surprised at how often people will be happy to offer some support, some encouragement. The only caveat is that you're not just completely taking from that person, expecting. So what can you do to help them? And then what can they do to help you? And I love that. I've had so many opportunities for, online collaboration with people that I've maybe met once or not met at all, and it's wonderful. Like, we have this conversation going on here, right? Same thing.
It's great. I remember a conversation I had with Jess Hollums, and she's trying to develop tourism not only in one part of Tohoku, but all of Tohoku. She's trying to help with the branding of a wider area. And I think we have this as individuals as well, right? We feel jealous if somebody else is doing better than us. It's like a human condition. And I think Gary Vee, who's a great entrepreneur inspiration, he always says, don't feel jealous, support them, praise them, and keep positive and keep doing what you're doing. And eventually, people will support you and then thank them. Like, be very humble, but be very supportive. And I think that's hard to do. But once you start doing it, you get so much value back by doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, going back to kind of, a different perspective, because look, how can you look at things in a different way? And I don't know, for maybe years ago, I had that feeling of jealous. But I think it changed quite quickly for me, because I see possibility very quickly. And so to me, if somebody's doing really well, that's a sign, well, I can do that, right? So it just depends on how you look at it. Are you going to look at it as something to be jealous about, or something that's encouraging for you?
Definitely. I saw another one of your key advice is on scheduling and planning. And you had a planning masterclass. Can you give us a few hints about your planning strategies?
Oh, which one? Actually, that one's coming out on the next, there's one part of that is coming out on the next Sasuga podcast episode. So let me think which two. Okay, let's keep it really, really simple, because this is the biggest thing, is so many people expect too much of themselves, right? You have this massive long to-do list of, I want to do this and this and this and this. And then by the end of the day, you're feeling like you haven't got very, very much done. Well, there's some very specific reasons for that. And is again also related to how the brain works. So, for example, by the end of the day, you've completely forgotten all of the things that you did do. This is actually a part of a brain function, which I'm talking about in the podcast episode as well. So you keep in your mind all of the things that you haven't done much more easily than the things that you have done. So just another simple thing. First of all, reducing your expectations of what you of yourself, and then recognizing it at the end of the day. Oh, actually, I did do this. Oh, actually, I did do this too. Oh, wait, and I did this too. Okay, and that's a start towards feeling better and planning in a more realistic way and not giving yourself a hard time. But yeah, the planning masterclass, that's still available now on the Sasuga website, and it goes through 7 very specific steps of how to do weekly planning. And this is, again, everything that I teach is based on my own experience, because I've gone through these struggles myself, and okay, well, what's going to work and make life easier.
Yeah, I find planning strategies often take up a lot of time. And then if you're not good at following through on your planning strategy, you've wasted all that time doing the schedule. And now you don't have time for doing things that are on the schedule. And then you get stressed by things you didn't do on the schedule. So I think these are definite time efficiency things that would really help a busy person.
Repetition. So this is why I talk about weekly planning. Because when you do it as a weekly process, the first time that you go through everything, the 7 steps, when I explain them in the Sasuga Planning Masterclass, it's going to take you time. But then when you do them the next week, it'll be a little bit less time, and the next week a little bit less time. And at the same time, as well as you having less time there, you're actually finding more time in your calendar and making sure that you're doing the really important things. And so Yeah, and
Yeah.
I constantly have I have a paper planner by my side the whole time, and I'm using this on a daily basis because it's so powerful. I mean, yes, you can use the electronic planner, and I do have calendar, and I do have that for sharing with my team, but physically writing things out helps to get it more in your brain, what you need to do and how you need to narrow things down.
I think so too. And I think we disregard a lot of digital alerts now as part of our online life. So if
Mhm.
everything from your calendar is only online, you might disregard that easier. For me as well, I
Absolutely.
rely on paper calendars, and
Yeah.
double check things and if I don't write it down, it's lost somewhere.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Go back to old school. Use paper and a pen.
Recycled paper if you can.
Yeah, definitely.
There's so many great planners in Japan too. We have the land of stationery and wonderful
Yeah,
planners here, right?
yeah.
So we have a few more minutes. Helen, is there something we haven't touched on that you'd like to talk about, or some key inspiration you could give people who are feeling kind of low right now about their situation? Maybe they've lost a bit of work, how to move forward in 2021?
Okay, so what I'm going to say might sound a little harsh. And again, it's back to what I said, you have a choice. So if you're feeling right now, oh, I'm in a a difficult situation, things have changed, you can only do what you can with the current situation, right? You can't change. None of us can change what's going on in the world. So today is the first day of the rest of your life. How's it going to be from now? And it doesn't have to be that you make massive changes and you're suddenly a very happy person, because if you're in maybe a depressed or very sad state right now, even just a little, what's a little thing that you can do to start feeling a bit better? And then you might slip again, but then back again. You've got a choice to move back again a little bit more towards positive. Just make it those little steps. To what can you do to make yourself, or to help, not even make yourself, but what can you do to support yourself to feel better? And talk with people, and get into supportive groups, whatever kind of group works for you. It's always, I always say this a lot as well, it's not necessarily you must do something in a certain way. Find what works for you, find what's fun for you, and then the more that you're having fun, you're making the contribution that you want to, then you can also help to encourage those around you, and there goes that ripple effect again.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful advice. Would you recommend that people keep a diary or some kind of log about their emotions and then reflect back? Oh, I'm feeling quite low when I do that activity. Maybe I should stop doing that or avoid that. Or that makes me feel good. Maybe I should do that more. It's hard for us to remember day to day, even though we have so much time. Maybe we have too much
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah. Well, journaling, definitely, I do recommend. And again, it's not necessarily that it's for everybody. Some people might not like it. A lot of people really do, because when you get all of the stuff that's in your head onto paper, then it brings you a sense of relief. And the other part is that you don't have to do it in a certain way. Again, it goes back to that, oh, I've got to do it this way, I've got to do it every day or whatever. Just do what works for you. The other part that I would say is that think about where you are in your cycle as well, right? Because you can, if you're in that phase 4, a very intense time, the premenstrual time, your body is naturally more internally focused. You're naturally more sort of negatively focused. And when you recognize that, think, okay, this is just where I am right now. Next week, I'm going to have a whole different outlook. And that's something as well that you can notice when you start to track on a daily basis, or it doesn't even have to be daily, but track on a regular basis. How am I feeling right now? What's easy for me today?
Yeah. And even for us women who have passed the menstruating time of our lives,
Yeah.
I still notice that I am still kind of on a cycle of sorts in terms of emotions and energy,
It's
and to accept that that cycle still exists, whether you're
yeah.
menstruating or not, is also very important, right?
It is because yeah, I often get the question, well, what if I'm not menstruating? Well, because we have pregnant women in the group and things like that, or or menopause, whatever. You still, as you say, you have a cycle, and some people find it useful to just follow the moon cycle. Like, so new moon would be the equivalent of phase one, and you can use that as a kind of a guide. And then everybody responds in different ways, so just find out for yourself, how am I feeling that week when it's the new moon? How am I feeling that week when it's the full moon? Those kind of things, and then you can gradually start to notice that. And also for men, so sometimes the guys say, this sounds great, but what about men? Men have their hormone cycle as well, but the male hormone cycle is a 24-hour cycle. So there's that difference in how you're feeling in a morning compared to the end of the day. So it's really about paying attention to yourself, being kind to yourself, and doing the best that you can in that situation.
Yeah, great. It's very similar to many strategies for sustainability, right? You have to assess the situation, see what opportunities are there to improve, and then reassess the situation and go through the stages again, right? It's
Right.
really on an individual, group, or business level, it's all the same. Marion has
Well,
a great comment right now. Thanks, Marion. She says, great advice, especially for a one woman business. You can't help feeling jealous or worried if you experience a temporary dip in business. I try to push myself to learn new things rather than worry. I think it's a challenge, but yeah, definitely worth doing. And good luck to you, Marion. It's a really difficult time, especially for one people businesses. I think it's easy to feel isolated, but
yeah.
like Helen was saying, there's so many great groups and camaraderie that you can build online.
Yeah. And think about the energy that you are spending when you worry, right? That's not nai, right? Rather than spending that energy and time on worrying, what could you be doing differently? It's about where you're focusing your attention. And I just was going to go back to the sustainability thing, because just before we were talking today, very recently, a dear friend had sent me a box of vegetables from her farm, just so beautiful. And there's coriander is in there as well, and it had these we finished the coriander at lunchtime, and it's these beautiful roots on it. I was like, oh, maybe I can get them to grow. So I popped them in some water. So I'm seeing if I can create my own little coriander garden.
Yeah. I think John Walsh in the series, who does urban gardening tutorials,
Yes.
he recommended the most things you can cut off the end of and try growing, and quite
Yeah.
often you'll be lucky and have some success. I know, if you buy in the store, they have the packet of soybeans, fresh soybeans, and quite often they have the root system in the bag. We've
Mm-hmm.
been having great success regrowing that in our kitchen, and then just trimming off the top and putting it on
Yes.
salads has been
Yeah.
fantastic. So, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely worth trying.
And avocado as well. So this is one that
Ah,
I several months ago, um, in another group, that an online group that I'm in, there was a recommendation, well, find something to plant and to just to nurture. And I was like, what can I do? And I was like, avocado. And so you first of all, you do it with water, and then you put it into the soil when it's got the root on. It took so long. It took so long for the root to come out of the avocado. I couldn't believe it. And then when I actually did get it, like it split open and the root came out, I was like, wow. And I was like so excited, and I was taking a photo, and then I dropped it and broke the root off. But now
it's
the root came back, and it's in soil, and it's actually growing into an avocado plant. So another 7 years, I'll have
that's
my
amazing.
avocado
Yeah. I've
yield.
been trying for years to grow avocado. It's very hard. So, well done. Thank you so much, Helen. That was a great discussion and so many great insights, I think, for empowering women or anybody if you're feeling a bit at a loss. Definitely check out Helen's Facebook page, SasugaCommunications.com. Is it?
So the
.com?
Facebook page is Sasuga Communications.
Okay.
So Facebook is just Sasuga Communications, Instagram, Helen Iwata, and the website is SasugaCommunications.com. And
And
all of
then
those other things.
also, you've got a great YouTube page with lots of videos as well. Yeah, so lots of information.
We don't have much of a YouTube strategy. It's just like whatever videos, just plop them up there. And
That's great. Because you're doing a lot of Facebook Lives. So it's nice to see that you're using that video again on YouTube because the audiences are different. So it's worth doing that.
yeah, yeah. And then also in like, for example, in the Sasuga Cafe, I'm doing Facebook Lives in there, and we have a whole library of the lives that go in there that are just for the cafe and the training for the cafe too. So yeah, lots of possibilities. This is it. Even though things seem pretty intense and difficult in 2021, there is a lot of possibility out there. So it's just a case of it's your choice and it's where you choose to focus your attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it helps you, you should remember that everybody worldwide is having similar struggles, that it's not just Japan, it's not just your business. And I found so much great support online by reading other people's posts and seeing what other people are trying to do, not only in Japan, but all over the world. So, yeah, do not feel alone. You have good company.
Yeah,
Take care,
absolutely.
everyone. And thank you so much, Helen. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a wonderful weekend. That is us for this week for Seeking Sustainability Live. What a nice way to end. Thank you so much, Helen. Next week, we have another great week of talks. So join us again from Monday next week. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.